My role has been to spearhead the transition from feudalism to democracy. Sheikh Abdullah, the unparalleled leader at that time of the Kashmiri people, was in jail. तो क्या होगा फिर आप बताइए?
If you have to compare the two, Narendra Modi and Jawaharlal Nehru,
Very
how do you do
interesting
that?
comparison. Very interesting comparison. Both of them won 3 elections. Both of them they were very, very popular figures. The power in the state is bifurcated between the governor and the chief minister. I don't think that is a very good idea, because the result is that, the administration and all tends to get paralyzed because they are not sure where they are supposed to get their orders from.
Your own memories with, because one man remains who has been a part of politics here, Mufti Muhammad Saeed. You must have also interactions with him also.
Mufti Sahab ke
Mufti
saath.
Sahab, your
I had
memories
interactions with him, but he let me down actually in some ways, because I don't know whether I should reveal that or not. How many people know now that I donated 1,000 canals of land to the Kashmir University? किसी को पता नहीं.
History is not all about mausoleums, minarets, and manuscripts. It is sometimes about men, living, walking, breathing men who you can shake your hands with, you can talk to and learn from. It's where history turns into a living being. There are people who don't just carry an aura with them, they carry an era, a wealth of experience. And this is where history, far from a subject or a discipline of study, turns into a presence that needs to be felt, that needs to be imbibed, and that needs to be loved. This is a moment when we are in the presence of that history. Welcome to GKTV, Dr. Karan Singh. It is such a great moment for us when you are in front of us and we know there is a century of 100 years of history in which you have not just been a keen observer of the things from outside, but you have been a part of it from inside with a full grasp of the things over the interiors. This program, this series, we have named as GK Headroom. In this times, in the times when media is becoming more about noise, we want that an understanding is developed, an understanding is generated, and we offer our readers, our viewers, something that adds to their understanding, to their learning, and if then they want to draw any conclusions, we leave it to them. Once again, we welcome you to this program with the hope that all our viewers will be waiting for this. Dr. Karan Singh, may I begin with a question? Now that we are living in the times which are very dangerous and we are precariously placed, one doesn't know where this crisis in Middle East is going to lead us, and some people use this word annihilation or obliteration that really scares you. When you began your political journey, that was a moment of transition, a transition from feudal, colonial, monarchical period into a democratic, freedom of expression, self-determination, a transnational organizations, managing these nation status. How do you feel at this moment? What is this transition going to look like?
Well, history and life is full of transitions. In fact, when I started my political career in this very house where you are, way back in 1949, 20th of June, I remember the date, my father appointed me regent of Jammu and Kashmir.
Right.
He had to live abroad for a few years, so I was regent from 1949 to 1952. Then came the Constituent Assembly and the new democratic setup, and the regent, there was a post of Sadr-e-riyasat was created for the first time.
Can we translate it into head of the state? Sadr-e-riyasat.
Sadr-e-riyasat means head of state.
Sort of.
Sadr is the chairman, Riyasat is state. So Sadr-e-riyasat means more or less, you may say governor or head of state. So I was head of state as regent, then I was head of state as Sadr-e-riyasat for 13 years, and then I was head of state as governor. So I had all these three nomenclatures, although the job was the same. So that was, as you said, is a moment of great transition. The feudal structure was disappearing, and a new structure was beginning to emerge. And it was a very exciting time for me as a young man to be participating in the process of transition. I mean, you could read about a transition, you can see it on film, but to be part of it itself, I think, is important.
That is what excites us when we talk to you, that you have been part of that transition, and here in this room, in presence of, in your presence, we can feel the history doesn't look like it's something remote. It looks so intimate.
Yes, very much so, because the transition, my role has been to spearhead the transition from feudalism to democracy. Because I started off as a Yuvraj, regent, then Sadr-e-riyasat, then governor. Then I joined Mrs. Gandhi's cabinet. So this was a clear-cut progression from a feudal system to a fully democratic system.
So you went through that entire spectrum of transition. With
18 years
states
here
18
as head
years.
of state.
So how do you make sense of now? Because in that transition, we had nation states emerging from that colonial background. And then we had transnational institutions like UNO also coming up and, drawing those rules for human rights as global covenants wherein people across borders would be gelled into some kind of a seamless, peaceful mechanism. But now all of it seems to be, pulling apart. Everything, borders are not now secure. People are dying in streets. If it comes to such a pass that the global leaders tell each other that you evacuate such and such city, what kind of an impact
It's
it makes?
absolutely astounding. I've seen many. I lived through the Second World War. I was at school, but I lived through it. I remember it well. And after that, we thought that with the creation of nation states, everybody would be peaceful. Not so at all. Throughout the world, there have been transitions and turmoil.
Right.
But this time it is more dramatic than ever before. I mean, you have the Ukraine-Russia war going on, which is quite an extraordinary thing because they are the same religion, the same race, more or less the same language, and yet they are fighting. And thousands of Russians, thousands of Ukrainians have been killed. Ukrainian cities have been blown up one by one. So it's been a terrible attrition, and it's still going on. Then you turn to West Asia, what they used to call the Middle East. Israel, first of all, the Hamas massacre. I mean, the Hamas people did a very foolish act by their attack on the Israelis, but the response has been much more than commensurate. As many as 50,000 Palestinians have been killed, men, women and children. So that is a terrible thing that is happening. And now Israel has invaded Iran, and Iran is hitting back. So both are saying evacuate Tel Aviv, or can evacuate Tehran, and the war is continuing. So it is absolutely astounding even for me, who has lived through such a lot of changes. I remember the breakup of Yugoslavia. General Tito was a friend of mine. That Balkanization of that was a very violent thing. But that was limited to a certain part of Europe. Now there are wars in Europe, there are wars in Asia, there are wars in Africa, there are wars in Latin America.
You invoked this breakup of the Yugoslavia. When that transition happened, you were in the company of great leaders. Your own mentor or your own role model, as you say, is Nehru, who brought you into this democratic space. As your words also, that you have learned the world by reading his books. Do you think right now there is an absence of global leaders of such stature who could manage the weight of the situation?
Well, I think so, because I remember when the non-aligned movement was there. I remember meeting, Jawaharlal was the main person, meeting President Nasser of Egypt, President Sukarno of Indonesia,
Fidel Castro
Archbishop
also.
Makarios from Cyprus. I mean, these are all the people who were there. Each one was a giant in his own field. Now we have leaders, mind you, still, but I'm not sure whether they have that intellectual capacity that the earlier leaders had. They are much more political in the sense that, they're not interested in ideology and history, they're just looking at their own thing. So we are in a very dangerous situation, I'd say that.
Dr. Karan Singh, it's not only that you have a political journey, you are a scholar in your own right, who has read faiths, who has read history, politics, everything. What do you attribute it to, this absence of standards now, absence of values now, absence of great political leaders now?
I think what has happened is that, as you stressed, as you mentioned, at one stage we thought we were moving towards the global society. I remember at the end of the last century, I was going around the world preaching the benefits of globalization. I thought that, look, the European Union was a unique phenomenon. I mean, different religions, different currencies, different languages, they all gelled into one. I said, if that could be the model, then SAARC could be a model, ASEAN could be a model. We could first of all move on to regional groupings and then come together. Unfortunately, that has not happened. In the 21st century, there's been a violent backlash against globalization. Backlash. I mean, Trump quite clearly says, I don't accept globalization.
Exactly.
I want America first. So what has happened, the recrudescence of militant nationalism has caused this turmoil.
On that thing, this militant nationalism, we all remember, but we have also grown up through this stage when we thought that there will be regional groupings, as you mentioned, SAARC, ASEAN, European Union was a wonderful phenomenon, African Union was there, and then there was United Nations organization at the top. But do you attribute this to the failure of the liberal secular leadership more than the rise of the conservative right, industrial military complex?
Liberalization, I'm afraid, has now taken a back seat. There was a very strong period when everything was being liberalized. Old taboos were being shed, whether they were sexual taboos or whether they were behavioral taboos. Everything was being shed. We were moving into a much more open society. That is now closing in again, which I think is a great tragedy.
Dr. Sir, before coming to discussing India as a historical and political phenomenon, and then Kashmir, which is closer to our heart and space, one last question on this. Since whatever is happening in the Middle East, you are a great believer in faith and you have a background in philosophy and mysticism. I just want to understand your own opinion about, because in this entire crisis, which is happening from decades now, one term is again and again being invoked, that is Islamophobia. What is your understanding of Islam as a faith? Because you must have had company of great Muslim leaders, maybe Abul Kalam Azad and others as well. How do you understand that?
One of the areas I've been active in is the interfaith movement, which is an international movement which strives to bring together people of different religious faiths in a creative dialogue. Not to decide which one is better, but to try and understand. As far as I've been able to understand, every religion ultimately preaches brotherhood, preaches looking after the environment. I did a big thing on faith and the environment in Assisi. We did a seminar. So if you interpret religion in liberal terms, then you get one answer.
Yeah.
But if you interpret religion in fundamentalist terms, you get a different answer. I think the thing with Islam is that Islam is losing that Sufi touch, which I think was the greatest achievement of Islam. I think perhaps after the Prophet Muhammad, Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi would be the person I would really respect, because that they brought the best out of love and understanding and peace and all. वो सब जा रहा है. And the fundamentalist structures of Islam are being put up. And that they have led to a number of violent incidents around the world, which has fed into this Islamophobia.
As you put it, that all faiths actually teach brotherhood and harmony. And it depends on how do you understand and how do you apply the religion in your lives. Islam, besides being a religion, is a lived experience also. There are Muslim societies. So is Hinduism. So is Christianity and every other religion. Do you think that somewhere this the construct of the Islam, whatever it is, became a handy tool in the hands of military industrial complex and those who are actually interested into war to make it as a dominant image of the Muslim societies and then wage wars?
Well, you see, but remember that India was also partitioned on the basis of religion. Don't forget that. Whether we like it or not, religion was the basis of the partition of India.
True.
So that was a traumatic event, the partition. As you know, lakhs of people died and it was a terrible thing. But that came through a certain commitment to a Muslim homeland, which left more Muslims in India than in Pakistan, by the way. So that has also gone into our psyche. We cannot forget that, because one of the arguments is that, dekho, as a result of Islam, our country was partitioned. But so that is at the back of everybody's mind. Even so, we've got to move towards more better relations between the various religions. Otherwise, it'll destroy our society again.
So before I'll come back to that partition and the entire history that unfolded then, because that is a very crucial area and you have witnessed
Very
it.
crucial. And J&K was directly involved.
Exactly. And we are, in fact, the consequences and the aftermath of that is still continuing. One last question on this is do you mean to say that psychologically people have not reconciled with what actually happened during the partition, and if it happened in the name of the religion, so it still rings in their minds and then generates political
You see,
response?
what also has happened at the same time is, don't forget that India was ruled for 700 years by the Muslims. Now, there were great achievements. For example, the Mughals, the great forts, the great buildings that they've done is a marvel. The gardens in Kashmir, Shalimar, the great beautiful pond in Verinag, which Jahangir ne banwaya tha, which to my mind is the most beautiful place in Srinagar. But there were also unhappy incidents. There were also killings. There were also forcible conversions. So that 700 years of Muslim history is now being reinterpreted. कि भाई उस वक्त से ये चल रहा था, and ultimately it ended up in partition the country. So there is a narrative now that doesn't start from 1947. It starts from
way back.
Babur.
Yeah.
And the people who, the freebooters and all, Ghazni and Gauri and all, who were looters. I mean, they were freebooters. They're not like the Mughals who were settled. So that is all now being brought out.
Dr. Saab, we are seamlessly coming to the point.
I'm trying to explain the Hindu psyche. The Hindu psyche is also beginning, when they learn about all these earlier events and now, that is why it is being manipulated in this way.
There was one way of approaching the history, as we can see Nehru's discovery of India, or on the world history with the letters that he wrote to Indira Gandhi. Understanding history in a very scholarly and intellectual way, and making a sense of the nuance that is always underlying any historical phenomenon. But do you think that nowadays, for some political ends, we have turned history into hysteria? And that is hysteria, a popular hysteria, and this is going to ruin us all.
Unfortunately, that is happening. It should be, because, history is there whether you like it or not. Certain events have taken place. You can interpret them in one way or the other. But we've got to move on.
True.
I mean, if we get stuck in history, then that paralyzes our faculties, our compassion, our understanding, and bogs us down in a very negative psychology. So what we have to do now, say, okay, this is what happened, fair enough. It was partition, ho gaya so ho gaya. Ab aage chalo.
So what would you suggest as someone who has been a part of politics right from 1947 up until now, part of Congress, part of the leadership, that if India or the subcontinent or the world at large, they have to heal these wounds, what should be that stroke of leadership and what should be the narrative that we need to build and make the coming generations a part of it so that we have a beautiful world where
I think
people
the sort
can
of
live.
narrative that Jawaharlal Nehru had laid down, how we were going to move in the future, is very clear. It has to be a liberal narrative. But as I said, unfortunately, that liberal narrative being overtaken now by a right-wing narrative, which rejects all possibilities of rapprochement, of understanding and all. So those of us who are still involved in the interfaith movement should become more active. That's all I can say. The leaders, unless you're very lucky to get a leader who happens also to be a scholar and who happens to be liberal, which is getting very rare now.
A rare combination.
Very rare.
So with this, I come to which is very personal also to you, your association or in the impact of this personality called Nehru on you. He is getting shuffled out of the Indian political
Yes.
frame, and that is being done coercively also. One is how what kind of a sense at an intellectual level you make, but second is how do you feel personally when this thing happens as if he was a
I
villain?
feel very pained because he was my mentor, my guru in a way, for 13 years, from 49 to 64. For 60, passed away in 1960.
It was after China, Indo-China war.
After China, 64. So for 15 years he was guiding me. And quite apart from my own personal thing, Nehru played a major role in the freedom movement after freedom. You can't cut him out now. It's very unfortunate and very unfair that an attempt is being made to denigrate Nehru, in fact to push Nehru out of the scene altogether. हमारे नेता कौन थे? Mahatma Gandhi, Sardar Patel, then you go. What happened to Nehru? I mean, Sardar Patel and Nehru were the two people who held this nation together after partition. I mean, you're much too young. I remember partition. I remember the chaos and disaster that there was everywhere. If it had not been for these two people, the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister, the Home Minister, country may have, what Churchill had said, that as soon as we leave, India will break into 20 pieces. वो 20 तैयार थे. Our linguistic states are all 20 of them.
Even this phenomenon of not just Nehru, but even Gandhi being now questioned. That is something which one could not have imagined some decades, some years back.
I think it's very unfortunate.
So you have memories of Nehru. Are there any memories of any interaction with Sardar Patel?
Yes, very much so.
Can you share that with us?
You see, Sardar Patel, I knew very well. He happened to come. I had this trouble with my hip. I was in a wheelchair. When Gandhiji came, I was also in the wheelchair when I met him. So Sardar aaye ghar, Jammu. And he said, why is this boy on a wheelchair? So my father said, 6 महीने से हम कर रहे हैं. He said, महाराज साहब अभी अरेंज करो इसको अमेरिका भेजने को, नहीं तो सारी उम्र ये कुर्सी पे रहेगा. So thanks to him, I was sent to America, where I was there in hospital for 1 year. But after my operation, I was able to walk again. I was able to play some tennis, able to play some golf. So I owe a great debt to Sardar Patel. And then in the end, when I became regent, he invited me to stay as his guest in the Dehradun dark bungalow where he lived. And he was there, he was very ill. Mani Bain, his daughter, was looking after. लेकिन शाम को मुझे बुलाते थे, बैठाते थे. So he was also very kind to me.
Your own assessment of these two personalities, Nehru and Sardar Patel, as is being now projected that they were poles apart. Nehru had a different idea of India. Had Sardar Patel been in the chair, he would have a different India offered to us. Is that true?
One was the left wing of the Congress, the other was the right wing.
Nevertheless, it was a Congress.
They were both in the Congress. They were within the parameters of the Congress and Gandhiji. But within that, as you know, in every great party, there is one wing or the other wing. So Jawaharlal ji was leader of the more liberal wing, and Sardar was a great organization man. He had the full control over the organization. So they were different. Their roles were different.
So he definitely was not the one who he is being projected now.
Who?
Sardar Patel.
As I said, in a way, he was representing the more conservative wing of the Congress party, whereas Jawaharlal Nehru was the more liberal wing. The Congress, as you know, was a huge umbrella organization.
It was an organism.
From right wing to left wing, virtually the communists. So there were obviously these changes. But it's no use projecting one and getting down the other. With Jawaharlal Nehru, we became a global power. He was known throughout the world. He was respected. जैसे आज नरेंद्र मोदी हैं, मैं तो जवाहरलाल जी से लेके नरेंद्र भाई मोदी तक, I've met all the prime ministers.
So if it's a very tricky question maybe, if you have to compare the two, Narendra Modi and Jawaharlal Nehru, how do you do that?
Comparison, very interesting comparison. Yeah. Both of them won 3 elections. Both of them they were very, very popular figures. पंडित जी भी जहाँ जाते थे लाखों लोग इकट्ठे हो जाते थे. उन दिनों में ये सारा इलेक्ट्रॉनिक नहीं था लेकिन, and they overshadowed their parties. Like Modi overshadows his party. Nobody bothers who is the president of the BJP because he is the boss. Same thing with Jawaharlal Nehru. So they had a lot in common. The difference, of course, is in ideology. One again was left wing, the other is right wing.
So, Gandhiji also in those heady days before partition, he came here, he met your father. I suppose Sheikh Saab was those days arrested by the Maharaja administration. Can you give us some insight into that conversation between your father and Gandhiji?
Well, I was sitting through the conversation. I must admit I wasn't able to follow it. He spoke in a low voice and a Gujarati accent and all. I could samjha nahi. But what I understand is that what he said to my father was, talk to your people. Find out wo kya chahte hain.
This was Gandhiji telling
more or less,
your
I
father.
think this was father.
So some people say that he pleaded the case of Sheikh Saab, that he should be released.
I don't think Sheikh Saab was more Jawaharlal Nehru. Jawaharlal Nehru, yaad hai, wo aaye the, we arrested him in Kohala.
When he was arrested
I
in
mean,
Kohala.
look at the ridiculous thing. The rising man for India and for the world, and we go and arrest him.
How do you feel about it now when you see
Very
that the Maharaja
upset.
administration?
Even at the time, I was very upset. Although Ramchandra Ka came in and proudly announced to my father, हमने बंद कर दिया जी उसको. मैंने कहा गए. The moment I said that is the end of this state and of this administration.
So what was the response of your father to
He didn't say anything very much, but just listened. But the point is that it shows how out of touch we were with the vast historic trends that were emerging.
So that was not being alert to what is now emergent and what is now inevitable.
No, you see, the difficulty, the tragedy with my father was, he was a very intelligent man. He was a very progressive ruler. For the first 25 years, he was, he brought in Bigar, वगैरह ये सब खत्म किया, women's education. He was very. The only thing is, he was not really aware of the historical trend. What were the rising forces? Congress. What do? We put the leader in jail. So the Muslim League he didn't like at all because he was anti-Hindu and anti-Muslim. Then British, who were the only ones who could have done something, he disliked them because he was a patriot. So all the great, and Sheikh Abdullah, the unparalleled leader at that time of the Kashmiri people, was in jail. So क्या होगा फिर आप बताइए?
Coming to now the current times, Congress was a force, Congress was an ecosystem, but now it has been reduced to some seats. It was only in last elections, parliament elections, that they got a significant number of seats. What would you suggest to the present Congress leadership if this party has to be revived, if all those values have to be reclaimed?
Well, I don't know whether I should suggest anything to them because they don't seem to want my opinion.
So that is the first suggestion, that you should seek the opinion of the people who actually have this understanding.
For the last 7 or 8 years, more or less, I have been, after my parliament term finished in 2018, my finally 40 years in parliament finished. 2019, they dropped me from the working committee. Or Karra ko laye. I don't want to say anything about Karra. He's okay, fine as a local leader.
But dropping you, a
But
stalwart.
after that, I have also withdrawn and they have also not bothered about me. So why should I give them any advice?
Leave aside the party. This idea of a liberal democratic space.
That is very important.
So
We
how
must
that
keep-
can be reclaimed?
We must keep that alive. We must prevent it from totally disappearing. The setting up of the so-called India Forum was a hopeful thing, but then they have not really worked together as a team. If they had started off as a team,
What could be the reason to your understanding, because you have been through all this?
I think they should have made Nitish Kumar the convener straight away. Because Nitish was the main person who tried to bring these people together. When he was overlooked, तो उन्होंने कहा मैंने ये सारा किया, अब मुझे पूछ नहीं रहे ये.
So the insistence on leadership remaining with the Congress and with the family.
Yes, I think that was not a good idea, because with Nitish dropping out, structure of this whole India thing started. अगर नीतीश रहते इसको उनको बनाते भी तुमने ये किया, you are chairman.
So now coming back to Jammu and Kashmir, which is closer to your heart, our heart, this is our space. The state that was carved by your forefathers, we have this expanse of across the line, Gilgit.
Massive state.
Massive state.
84,000 square miles.
Exactly. Gilgit-Baltistan, now Muzaffarabad, 2 administrative units across the line.
Ladakh.
On this side, we have Leh and Kargil now stitched into one union territory. Then we have Kashmir and Jammu, which actually gave it the name. They are, tied to each other into another union territory. Do you think, as a flashback, that this was a geographical construct which was only there as long as there was an outside magisterial power of the Maharajas, and there was nothing inherent in them that could connect them, because it has fallen all over?
This is a very disparate state in the sense that there were all these different units. They had different religions, different cultures, different languages. They were all totally different. And they were only brought together under Dogra rule. Once Dogra rule lapsed, there was nothing to keep them together. Sheikh Abdullah was a great leader, no doubt, but he was the leader of the Kashmiris. उनके मुकाबले का leader होगा नहीं कभी. Let me tell you this, because Kashmiris now don't appreciate what Sheikh Abdullah did for the Kashmiri people. He raised them from a sort of despised and ostracized race to a full-fledged structure.
Your memories with Sheikh Sahib?
नहीं, मैं बात सुनी ना. But the problem with Sheikh Abdullah was his influence was confined to the Kashmiri speaking people. It wasn't able to go beyond that in Jammu and Ladakh and Baltistan. He was not able to do it. So the point I was making was, with the end of Dogra rule, there was nothing that was going to keep the state together. In fact, we lost half the state by the end of that ceasefire.
1948 October.
48 document. Gilgit-Baltistan left, Mehmood-ur-Rashid, the Punjabi Muslim belt, वो दोनों निकल गए. यहाँ से अक्साई चीन चाइना ने ले लिया 62 में. So we've lost more than half our territory. और अब तो खैर बिल्कुल ही वो हो गया है. So I think that was inevitable. Like Yugoslavia, President Tito was a great man. I was a friend of his. I traveled with him around India. And one evening I was sitting in one of these places, game sanctuaries. He was going out shooting. And I don't shoot, Mr. President, I am on the side of the animals. Anyhow, he came back, he said, you must have been praying for the animals. I didn't get. So I asked him, I said, Mr. President, can I ask you a question? As a student of political science, you've made a new constitution allowing for secession. Do you think that Yugoslavia will continue after you? Do you know what he said to me? He said, Mr. Minister, if after I go the states want to break, let them break. This is Tito, the creator of Yugoslavia, realized that it wouldn't last beyond him. तो हमारे यहाँ भी डोगरा रूल के बाद you couldn't keep it.
But even if you can't have one political entity, great leaders have this vision of, like you talked about, Tito, that at least have some mechanism that if you want to apportion this political power differently, let's not become hostile to each other, let's not kill each other. At least that could have happened so that borders were porous and people could meet.
Actually, we didn't kill each other. It was those people who came from across the border who started the killings. Luckily, they were never any Dogra Kashmiri riots. Can you recall any Dogra Kashmiri riot? Koi Kashmiri ghar jala diya? No, none.
Partition was something that was away from this territory in that sense. In that sense. So coming closer, hand on your heart. When in 5th August 2019 this thing happened, how did you feel intuitively? What was your first response to that announcement that this side of the state, which was a political unit with certain constitutional value into it, when this was broken down into two union territories?
Yes.
What was your feeling as a person?
It was a very interesting reaction. Of course, there was some regret. In any case, my father's state had disappeared. It wasn't there any longer. अब थोड़ा बहुत जो बचा था, also, in a way, it was a logical progression on the breakup of the state. Gilgit-Baltistan, Ladakh, ultimately ये जाने थे. They were not part of Jammu or Kashmir. However, there were some positive elements. For example, there were lakhs of disenfranchised people. वो जो सियालकोट से आए थे, they were not allowed to vote. They could vote for me as parliament. They couldn't vote in the assembly. They couldn't get a job.
West Pakistani refugees.
Because they came from Sialkot. They were not state subjects. So they got enfranchised. The thing about women, that if you marry a non-Kashmiri, you lose your property, that was also unfair. वो भी बात निकल गई. तो कुछ तो पॉजिटिव फीचर्स भी हुए हैं और कुछ ये है कि नॉस्टैल्जिया जी हमारी स्टेट होती थी इतनी बड़ी अब घटती घटती बन गई तो क्या हुई बट व्हाट हैज़ नॉट बीन अप्रिशिएटेड आई थिंक आइदर इन कश्मीर और इन जम्मू वाज द डिमोशन टू अ यूनियन टेरिटरी स्टेट रह जाते ठीक है वो जो करना था कर लेते लेकिन जो यूनियन टेरिटरी बना दिया पहले तो कहते थे मुकुट है हम वी आर दी क्राउन ऑफ इंडिया नो क्राउन होते होते अब वी आर इवन जूनियर टू हरियाणा एंड हिमाचल दैट इज नॉट समथिंग विच इज अप्रिशिएटेड
So your own personal dream can be that the statehood, you should see the restoration of the statehood, am I correct?
Yes, I would like to see it, but I'm not overly sentimental about it because, I agree with you that the old state is no longer there. There's no use pretending that the old state is there. So we've got to come to terms with the fact that there is now a new state pared down to the minimum of Jammu and Kashmir.
What can be the political journey onwards from now? If this is a nostalgia, which can be there, but it is of little political use, that once upon a time it used to be a great state, but at least in terms of political rights, in terms of the dignity of the people, in
Those
terms of economic
get back.
chances, so that what can be the contours of a struggle for a political party like National Conference or the political people in Jammu, that can they come together to fight or to put a
I
good
don't see
fight
why they
for the
need to fight
restoration of-
because the government of India has already committed is going to give back statehood. They committed to the Supreme Court. They committed to the people during the elections. So I don't think we need have big agitations and all. We should simply keep pressing politically.
Maybe fight in that way, through political parties,
Through political parties,
instruments,
we should
insisting
try
on
and
this.
Put influence on, for example, the BJP, who swept all 26 Hindu seats in Jammu. They should keep talking to their leadership. कि भी आप करो. Umar is already talking. So I don't think there's any conflict there. I don't envisage a conflictual struggle. I envisage a quiet political struggle.
So a quiet political struggle based on a certain degree of argument articulated in the relevant spaces. So before I come to this, a kind of a contest or kind of an estrangement between Jammu and Kashmir, is it a part of that struggle or a part of that political movement or political, sort of effort that the people of Ladakh, people of Kargil and Leh, they also have a reason that they align with the people on this side and ask for the political rights, maybe have some kind of an
उनको तो
arrangement.
वो तो अलग रहेंगे जी, उनका कोई यहाँ के साथ वो खास ताल्लुक नहीं है. Neither do they have any empathy from this side, nor do frankly the people of JNK have any empathy for them. They are a different world. Ladakh is a different world, it's a different culture, it's a different language, it's a different food, it's a different dance, it's a different dress. So let them have their thing. Don't try and get them back into an artificial construct.
Okay. So, but they also have a right to ask for the restoration of the state. Yeah.
Let them ask what they want.
Okay. On this Jammu and Kashmir, now this is a union territory. This is one political unit, whatever the kind of the unit. But as we have seen in the last elections, and this has remained the trend post 1947, that people of Jammu vote for a different political entity, and people of Kashmir overwhelmingly vote for another entity. Do you think that there is any possibility of in future to have a political party that can actually reconcile the two aspirations
I don't
and
think
turn
so.
into a one political
Mehbooba
party?
tried it.
Yeah.
I mean, she had the BJP with her. For that matter, even Mufti Saab tried it. No, it didn't work. You see, again, Jammu and Kashmir are psychologically and in many ways they are very different. So they will have different political parties. I'm afraid we cannot avoid that. But this time the polarization was very clear because the BJP swept all 26. Usually the Congress used to win a few parties. वो तो बिल्कुल sweep हो गया. And here at least the Congress won thanks to the National Conference. They won 5 or 6 seats. But more or less the National Conference dominated. So you have these two parties. I don't think they're going to come together. But as far as statehood is concerned, I think that they are common.
So, but at least if this thing remains so, and two peoples in Kashmir and Jammu look at each other as some kind of, one coming in the way of others' politics, so don't you think that there is a danger of this hostility brewing into something really, disastrous, something really which one wouldn't like?
I don't think it will. In fact, they are dependent. For example, Jammu trade is dependent on Kashmir. Mainly the goods coming from Kashmir or people coming to Kashmir come via Jammu. You see, Jammu in fact is now getting cut off because the trains are now going directly to Katra. Darshan karke, they come into the train, go back by the same train. So Jammu is getting bypassed within Jammu, nothing to do with Kashmir, within its
the
own
larger
region.
Jammu province.
But I don't see it, if it hasn't broken into violence over all these years, there's no reason why now there should be any violence between Kashmir and Jammu.
But at least isn't there a need of, if it is happening when we have this railway line alignment in a way that the Jammu city gets bypassed, isn't there a need that we have more surface connections with the Jammu, so that at least at the level of civil society, at the level of trade, the connections are thick?
Tunnels ban gaye hain ab to. Ab train is also coming here, then the roads are coming, the tunnels are coming. The connectivity has become tremendous now. There used to be just one so-called Banihal cart road, I remember, when we were small. और जिस दिन हम जाते थे तो सारी ट्रैफिक बंद हो जाती थी because Maharaja is moving, दरबार move होती थी. My father used to go ahead, हम पीछे आते थे. That is finished. Now there are so many ways. And there are dozens of flights and there are trains and there are roads and there are tunnels and all. So I think there's tremendous connectivity.
A nugget of historical information: when the Maharaja with his caravan would move from Srinagar to Jammu, how would it be like? How much time it would take you, and what would be the arrangement?
It would take 2 days. रात को हम रामबन रहते थे. पिताजी तो चले जाते थे शायद एक ही दिन में. हम रात को रामबन रहते थे. My mother and I, and then we used to go the next day.
So, if coming back to this Kashmir, when National Conference came to power just recently with a thumping majority, somebody asked this question to Umar, if my memory is with me. He said that I'll go to the relevant spaces in India and talk about the restoration of this statehood. What would you suggest to a person like Umar Abdullah, that how he should take it up and how he should meet the relevant spaces and create an argument in favor of the restoration, so that in your own words, it doesn't become a fight, it doesn't become a hostility, but
I think Umar is behaving with great maturity now. I must say, I have not met him, he has not come to see me, but from what his speeches and all, he's been very moderate and sensible. He said the same thing that I said, कि भाई अब we don't want to be fighting the center all the time. We want full support from the center. तो रोज ही अगर हम लड़ते रहें तो फिर how are we going to progress?
right. Fighting, not a good idea, but some people would say that it is too much of a moderation because he's not asserting himself also. Do you buy that
Well,
argument?
yes, he's in a difficult position. You see, today the position is very awkward. The power in the state is bifurcated between the governor and the chief minister. I don't think that is a very good idea, because the result is that, the administration and all tends to get paralyzed because they are not sure where they are supposed to get their orders from. So that has to be changed. Once statehood comes, automatically it will be changed.
Right. One personal question at the level of the feelings. When you are in Kashmir, how do you feel?
Sorry?
When you are in Kashmir, in Srinagar, here, how do you feel?
I feel very nice. ये घर तो I grew up here in this house. इसका नाम था ताले मंजिल. Let me tell you history.
Right, I've seen that plot
इसलिए
outside
ताले
Tale
मंजिल था
Manzil.
कि पिताजी के there was a great friend, the Nawab of Palanpur, Tale Muhammad Khan. Palanpur is a small Muslim state in Gujarat. He was in college with my father, Mayo College. So they were great friends. So Bapuji called this Tale Manzil, and he has built a Hari Manzil in Palanpur.
Okay, there's a stroke of brotherhood and harmony, which I think not many people know about this.
People
It's
don't
a
know
nugget
about
of
it.
history.
You see, people don't know about a lot of things. Let me tell you now that you've started this, and I want to get this off my chest. How many people know now that I donated 1,000 canals of land to the Kashmir University? किसी को पता नहीं? Do you know 1,000 canals of land in Hyderabad क्या उसकी कीमत होगी? You need a computer to work it out.
One can only imagine.
They do not have the courtesy to either acknowledge that properly, put up a plaque, नए gates बना रहे हैं. मैंने कहा आपने ये gates बनाए मेरे नाम पे नहीं. I'm still alive by God's grace. It was known as Amar Singh Bagh. तो अमर सिंह गेट तो बनाओ एक कम से कम.
What was their response?
कुछ नहीं. Zero. I want you and your readers and the Kashmiri people to know कि मैंने 1000 कनाल ज़मीन जहाँ यूनिवर्सिटी बनी हुई है और जिसकी कीमत का आप अंदाज़ ही नहीं लगा सकते, मैंने प्राइवेट अपना ऑर्चर्ड दिया उनको. और इतनी भी उनमें वो नहीं, सॉरी आई डोंट वांट टू यूज़ द वर्ड कर्टसी, कि वो करें. तो लोगों को तो पता चले कम से कम.
We have I'm a student of Amar Singh College, SP College, and people hold it in great esteem.
See, what happened was, when I was chancellor here, they started looking for a place to build a university. एक जगह उन्होंने फाउंडेशन स्टोन रखवाया डॉक्टर राधाकृष्णन से. वो फाउंडेशन स्टोन भी कोई ले गया उठा के उस जगह ही खत्म, पता नहीं कौन सी जगह. तो लोग सब हैरान थे कि what to do. I said I'll give you my orchard. मैंने इतनी 1000 कनाल का ऑर्डर दे दिया, किसी ने कोई उसकी कदर नहीं की. न कश्मीरी जनता को पता है इस बात का, और यूनिवर्सिटी वाले मस्त बैठे हुए.
Oh, that is a piece of historical information that, at least thanks to this interview, it will go into the public space. That will go into the public space. Sir, one more thing. When you became but you worked in the space where Sheikh Saab also worked. Sheikh Saab was an adversary, if we take it back pre-1947. How is it like working with an adversary?
Well, he was an adversary to my father. Personally, I had no problem with him. He was all right with me. But it was difficult because he was representing a certain thought process, and I was put in there as a sort of, in a way, the last representatives of the Dogras. But I had to be very, very cautious because so it was a very tightrope walking that I did.
And when in 1953 Sheikh Saab was arrested?
In this room. That's where I had our last meeting with him. That's where I saw Bakshi Ghulam Muhammadin at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Okay. It was how many days before he was arrested?
That was the day he was arrested.
That was the day.
उसी रात को तो गवर्नमेंट बनाई नहीं हमने. पाँच को गुलबर्ग गिर गया, वहाँ उनको अरेस्ट कर दिया. मैंने साइन किया.
So you had to put down the signature.
I had to
Sadr-e-riyasat.
उन्होंने कहा कौन है ये सदर-ए-रियासत, कल का छोकरा, मैंने इसको बनाया सदर. ठीक कहा, मतलब क्या कहेंगे, हालात ऐसे थे. फिर मैंने आधी रात को बख्शी गुलाम अहमद को बोला. Our original intention was not to imprison him. बख्शी ने कहा भी देखिए अगर खुला रहेंगे तो मैं गवर्नमेंट नहीं बना सकता हूँ. He was so popular. So then we had to arrest him. गाड़ी में डाल के हम उनको बटोत ले गए. राइट्स भी हुए थे उस वक्त. हमने ज़्यादा पब्लिसिटी नहीं दी लेकिन उस वक्त भी लोग उठे थे. तो ये हुआ तमाशा और यही इसी घर में हुआ.
So this is witness to the great historical
आप जहाँ बैठे यही तो सारा कुछ हुआ.
And yards away we have residents of Farooq Abdullah and Umar Abdullah. Do you sometimes really want to meet them in a personal capacity? Have
नहीं, फारूक से तो मेरे बड़े अच्छे ताल्लुकात हैं. मैं आप एक बात बताऊँ आपको. मैं 4 बार तो इलेक्शन जीता उधमपुर से. फिर बेवकूफ़ी हर एक आदमी करता है, मैंने भी की. बेवकूफ़ी क्या की, उधमपुर की जीती हुई सीट छोड़ के जम्मू चला गया. खामखा का. नोबडी गिव्स अप विनिंग सीट. लॉस्ट. तो उसके जाने के बाद मैं 12 साल बाहर. मैंने कहा छोड़ो पॉलिटिक्स, हो गया 4 बार जीत गए तो छोड़ गया. तो बहुत 10 years later हम बैठे थे दिल्ली घर में, तो डॉक्टर साहब आए. आजाद शत्रु भी बैठे हुए थे वहाँ. मैं सन तो माननीय को कहा उन्होंने, मैं इसको कहता हूँ, उनको कहने का अंदाज़ होता, मैं इसको कहता हूँ कि सेंट्रल हॉल आया करे, ये नहीं आता है. मैंने कहा शेख साहब मैं तो एक्स MP के रूप में नहीं जाऊँगा. उन्होंने कहा क्यों एक्स MP, हम आपको MP बनाएंगे. आजाद शत्रु को वो ले गए मिनिस्टर बना के, और मुझे उन्होंने, ही वॉज द वन हू गॉट मी बैक इनटू पॉलिटिक्स आफ्टर 12 years. और उसके बाद फिर मैं और 18 साल रहा. 3 बार 4 साल बार पहले राज्यसभा इन्होंने किया, फिर 3 बार सोनिया गांधी ने की. सो आई ओवर डेट टू फारूक अब्दुल्ला. फारूक अब्दुल्ला से मेरी कभी बदमज़गी नहीं हुई. नाचते हैं, गाते हैं, बहुत मस्त आदमी हैं.
How would you compare the two, Farooq Saab and his son Umar?
And who?
And Umar.
Umar is much quieter, very different from Farooq. I don't know Umar that well, I must tell you. I know Farooq Saab better because, you know, he's only 5 or 6 years younger than me.
Before I wrap it up with one last question that is really, again, personal. Your own memories with, because one man remains who has been a part of politics here, Mufti Muhammad Saeed. You must have also interactions with him also?
Mufti Saab ke
Mufti
saath.
Saab.
I had interactions with him. But he let me down actually in some ways because I don't know whether I should reveal that or not. He said कि आप विक्रमादित्य को भेजिए PDP में.
Again, your son.
My elder son. Ajad Shatu तो younger son है ना, जो BJP में.
Ajad Saab, he was a part of National Conference government.
Part
also.
of National Conference, then he BJP, he is now in the BJP. तो आप PDP को तो मैंने कहा हाँ उसको उनको मिनिस्टर बनाएंगे. मैंने कहा ठीक है. विक्रम को उस वक्त इंटरेस्ट नहीं था ज़्यादा, लेकिन मैंने कहा भाई मौका मिल रहा है. He joined. They did nothing for him. यानी he told me face to face across the table कि हम बनाएंगे, फिर भी कुछ नहीं बनाया उन्होंने. अल्टीमेटली 2-4 महीने रह के विक्रम also got fed up. महबूबा आ गई थी, वो भी छोड़ के निकल गए.
So afterwards, did you ever meet Mufti Saab and?
नहीं, कोई ख़ास नहीं मुफ्ती साहब के साथ हमारा. I used to play bridge with him. He was a very keen, not a very good player, but very keen.
Okay. So as a politician, how would you assess him?
He was a very shrewd politician. देखिए होम मिनिस्टर रहे इंडिया के होम मिनिस्टर रहना कोई छोटी बात नहीं है, सरदार पटेल की कुर्सी में बैठे। लेकिन वो सारा जो वो लड़की की किडनैपिंग वगैरह हुई और फिर वो छोड़ने, उससे सारा धूमिल हो गया। दैट वाज अ वेरी बैड इवेंट।
So one last question, because we know it must have been very
फारूक ने
tiring.
कहा कि नहीं छोड़ो इन लोगों को, और देखो जिन लोगों को छोड़ा उन्होंने क्या क्या तबाही की। मसूद कौन थे जिन्होंने वो लश्कर तोयबा कायम किया।
So, but Mufti Saeed was when his daughter was kidnapped, or
हाँ,
that was one period. That was, I
and then
think,
there was
early
that
90s. That was another
plane
one.
hijack.
Yeah, plane hijack.
Even then Mufti was in the chief minister. तो खैर वो सारा मामला हुआ।
Dr. Karan Singh, thank you very much.
I'm sorry to be frank, because
No,
you
no, no.
wanted my frank views.
That's what we actually want, that there should be frank and fearless discussions about history that adds to the understanding of the people, because people finally are not about holidays and memorials. People are about being people. So they have to carve out the ways of living together and living for the future generations. Thank you very much for this long and very revealing and very frank discussion.
I've
with
enjoyed
Kashmir
talking
TV.
with you.
Thank you very much. My pleasure, sir. My pleasure, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.